Welcome to I Love This Thing So Fricking Much, a podcast about passion. My name is Sophie Katz, and today I am joined by Sam, a magic nerd. Welcome back to the show, Sam.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well myself.
Good. So here's how this works. Sam will have 3 minutes to talk about something that he loves. This can be a person, place, thing, concept, activity, anything he wants. Our only requirement is that he loves it wholeheartedly and wants to tell us why. Are you ready, Sam?
I am.
Good. Got my timer here. Now, what do you love so freaking much?
I love Magic the Gathering so freaking much. I've been playing Magic for about 9 years since I bought my first deck in 2014. I've been playing the Pokemon card game before that, and then it transitioned into Magic along with my friends, and we play at the mall with a bunch of people who shared our passion and interest. I play a format of Magic called Commander, which is also known as Elder Dragon Highlander. And that is a very social format of the game. There are usually 3 to 5 players, and you get to build a very personal deck and you can tune it to your preference. In the game, some people are very strategy driven, some people are aesthetically driven, fun driven, lore driven, and I'll get into that a little later. And I'd say that I align with all of those. To me, Magic stands out as such an incredible card game. I feel like the creators really push past the strategy and aesthetics and dive into creating stories and purpose. So, Magic is a card game, and each card that you can play has depictions of characters or characters themselves and scenes that go along with release stories about what is happening in the lore of Magic. There are tons of different interesting stories and adventures that go along with the card. Another aspect of the game that I personally appreciate is their use of color and their color symbology. And I find that really interesting because I am a graphic designer, and that is another one of my passions. So it's very inspiring to me. So there are 5 different colors in Magic. There's blue, green, red, white, and black. And they all play their own roles in strategy and in storytelling. For example, green represents life and tradition and nature. Blue represents knowledge and manipulation. White represents safety and community. Red represents emotion, freedom, and action. And black represents power, death, and sacrifice. So you can play decks that represent just one color. So if I play a blue deck, the cards themselves will represent that theme
Go ahead and finish your thought.
pretty clearly. But one of my favorite things is how they combine these colors. So if I were to play a green and black deck, it would mesh together the components of life and death, and the strategy and the aesthetics would match that purpose. And I would get to play with that specific strategy that aligns with the colors.
That's really interesting. Thank you for telling us about Magic the Gathering today.
Yeah, of course.
I want to jump back to the beginning for a moment because you mentioned that first you were into Pokemon cards and then you and your friends transitioned over into Magic the Gathering. Was there any particular reason for this switch?
So I was the most resistant one to switching into Magic the Gathering. The reason that we became such good friends was our passion for playing the Pokemon games. And we would get together and we would play on our DS devices and just kind of like compare Pokemon. And then we got into the card game and we would play at the mall. And we noticed that over to the side, people were playing the game Magic the Gathering. And it just looked a lot more intense, a lot more interesting. There was a lot more going on.
Mm-hmm.
So my friends took an interest in it. And after some coaxing, I ended up buying a deck from Walmart. And then that's where my passion grew from.
What about it caught your attention first and made you think, oh yeah, I made the right decision here?
The first deck that I picked out, the commander of the deck was called Izuri Claw of Progress. And it was a purely aesthetic decision when I picked it out. It looked very similar to an anime character from the anime Attack on Titan.
Mm-hmm.
It looked a lot like Eren, and that was really fascinating to me. So that's what first clicked, and that was kind of like my first emotional link to the game.
Talk a little more about the color symbology, especially as that ties into your interests as an artist, as a graphic designer.
So I currently work at the Center of Spirituality and Healing at the University of Minnesota, and we have a well-being model, and there are five different components, each leading to a specific color. And a main component of that is that the colors represent something. So blue represents loyalty and passion, and that is a very direct link to what it is known for. And Magic kind of twists that and uses that color to represent a storytelling element, and therefore just making this really cohesive. Trying to think of the right way to say it. I am just really inspired by when they combine colors in the game, they're taking so many components of, they're taking the strategy behind what each color can do, and they are taking what each color represents, and they're merging it together to create a new strategy and new aesthetics. That is just a very inspiring thing for me. And it's really fun to have a deck where each card that I play kind of shares this aesthetic to one another. And that it's really nice to have a board of this cohesive whole.
Yeah, I like that word cohesive there because it sounds like the whole concept of Magic the Gathering is a very cohesive thing, that the strategy you use with the cards is also linked to how the cards look, is also linked to the stories and characters on the cards, and it all just comes together into this cohesive whole.
Right, right.
I'm very curious about how the cards are characters and scenes from stories. Are there any particular characters or stories or plot lines that stand out to you?
Unfortunately, I myself am not super into the lore of Magic,
All right.
but I can tell you that there is a zombie-like transition that a lot of the characters are going through right now. And
Uh-oh.
it is like they're being turned into Phyrexian creatures. And that's kind of like a zombification of sorts. And it is affecting not only their aesthetics, but what the characters do on their cards, which I find really interesting.
Yeah, what kind of impact does becoming a zombie have on their abilities?
That's a good question. There's this new mechanic called Toxic, and it deals infect counters to a player. So the difference is when you're playing Magic, one way to win is to deal damage to your opponent, and
Mm-hmm.
the opponent starts out with 40 life. So if you deal 40 damage, then the opponent will die. But if you have a creature with Toxic, and it deals infect damage, then you only have to deal 10 infect damage to kill that opponent.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a big power boost.
Right.
Is there anything that you don't like about Magic the Gathering? And if so, how do you handle that?
I'd say something that I don't like has less to do with the game and more to do with just people in general.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a very competitive person, and there are a lot of competitive formats out there for Magic players. And these people will go from format to format depending on like what their game store is hosting that day. So I am a very casual commander player, and sometimes I get pitted up against someone who is a very competitive modern player. And that game will, in turn, be less fun for me because we just have very different styles of playing the game. But that's a conversation I can have with the people before the game starts, which I usually do.
It sounds like there's different ways to engage with this game, but like with any games, there are people who play and they play to win, and that's the main point, and that's what they like about it. And it sounds like you're more in this for the decks and the cards and the aesthetic and just having a good time with the combinations and seeing what you can make.
Right, right, exactly.
So when you're making a deck, you said that you could make them to personalized to your own preference. Are there any specific details that what makes a deck your preference?
There is a pool of about 40,000 cards that you can choose from in Magic the Gathering because the game's been around for about 30 years. So, a commander deck, for instance, has only 100 cards in it, and they all have to be different cards.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are just so many adjustments you can make to your deck. And it also depends on your commander because your commander leads this 100 card deck. And depending on who you choose for your commander, the 100 cards surrounding that commander will be different. which is very exciting.
Yeah, it's like infinitely customizable, it sounds like.
Right, yeah.
Sam, thank you so much for telling us about something you love today.
Yeah, of course, I had a blast.
And thank you, our listeners, for tuning in today. If you have something you love so fricking much you want to tell me all about it, consider this your invitation to join the show. I Love This Thing So Fricking Much is a production of Through the Window Media. This episode was directed and edited by Sophie A. Katz. You can find us at Through the Window on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or Tumblr. That is THROU the Window at all those social media sites. Be good to yourself, be kind to each other, and you'll hear from us again soon.